In the words of the legendary Lou Gellerman, hello, dog fans, and welcome to the Sound the Siren podcast, because everything matters, including being, as we sit here tonight and record this, literally less than 2 days away from 2024 Husky football. I am your host, Hooligan7. I'm joined tonight by my buddy JCap. JCap, how are you doing tonight, pal? Welcome back.
Back like we never left. We're 2 days away from kickoff. Can't be too upset about that. So we're ready to roll.
Great to have you back. We do have a couple. We didn't quite get to some of the season superlatives in the Doognostication episode from last week, so we're going to cover that in segment 2. But we're certainly going to get some Doognostication from you first. But
Yes,
first,
sir.
of course, I have to mention that of course that Sound the Siren is on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Sound the Siren UW. Please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're listening to this in audio format. If you're watching on YouTube, please like this video and hit that subscribe button to get notified when we post new content. We're working to expand that out, and we'll be posting more often. If you'd like to support Sound the Siren, you can do so at podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/Sound the Siren pod UW/support. And that will be linked on the screen. But without further ado, stupid tweets. I'm not going to call out one specific stupid tweet. I'm going to call out a specific stupid account. And that's at Blue Blood's Bias for constantly hyping Colorado and then being confused about why Colorado had a narrow victory this evening against North Dakota State.
Correct.
Newsflash. It's because Colorado is not very good.
It's true.
They still don't have an offensive line.
That team is all Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders and a bunch of Jags.
Jimmy Horn's pretty good too.
Yeah,
it's
true.
A lot of skill position, but when you have like literally nothing up front.
Yeah. That is a good point. Yeah, I don't really have any stupid tweets for tonight except for everyone on the old X, formerly known as Twitter app. That's just hyping Colorado for a 5-point victory against North Dakota State, reminiscent of their 2-overtime win against Colorado State last year.
I mean, they beat a team in green.
True.
Both years. I mean, I think that's something, I guess.
See if they improve and don't have to go to double overtime against Colorado State in a few weeks.
And we did forget to do beverages. I will briefly mention that I'm going with a tailgate classic, and that's Vitamin R.
Vitamin R, Ranier.
What do you got tonight?
I'm on a Brew Doctor Pink Lemonade Kombucha.
Ooh, nice. Gotta love a good kombucha.
Yes, sir.
What I will also say is, in terms of speaking of Colorado and doing stupid things, their complaint or claim that Oregon was spying on them. And here's how stupid this is. Colorado, you're making me defend the Oregon Ducks.
Yeah.
What the hell are you doing?
It takes a special kind of stupid.
They didn't need to spy on you to kick your teeth in last fall.
Yeah.
And they won't. Not that game is happening again this year, but not any team halfway decent isn't going to need much spying to do the damn same thing.
Absolutely correct.
So let's just get into your it's time for you to Doognosticate.
My Doognostication.
And so we'll do a quick version of what you think was going to happen with Weber State, because we're obviously going to talk about Weber State in a little further depth at the close of the show. But high-level prediction for Weber State.
High-level prediction.
Saturday.
If we want to just go quickly, the first 3 weeks of this season, I'm just going to say World Wide Web wins all over the place.
.WashingtonWins.com.
Yeah, that too. But no, Weber State, with all due respect to our FCS opponent, that shouldn't be a problem. Eastern Michigan should be an easy win. Washington State playing at Lumen without Cam Ward shouldn't be all that difficult. Northwestern should be the bottom feeder of the conference, or close to it. Rutgers on the road. That seems like to be the popular pick to be an L among the UW community right now. I went with it being an L. I feel like it's a short week going cross country. There's really not much more to say about it than that. Rutgers, I feel like, could be a surprise team in the conference as well. Michigan, national championship rematch at home. I think we can squeak out a win there. Think it's probably, I'm not going to score predict all of them, but I would say that that's probably less than a touchdown win, but I think we can pull it out.
I would say that particular football team has a Jim Carrey sized question mark at the quarterback position.
Yeah,
and
100%.
Coming to one of the loudest environments in college football that's going to be hungry for blood after that national championship
After what
game.
happened, yes.
Good luck to you with that one.
Exactly. I do think that win is sandwiched by L's. I think we're going to go on the road to Iowa after that, and it's going to be a really big emotional week against Michigan, and again, flying cross country right after that, going to Iowa. I think playing against that defense in their place.
In that environment.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be a tough one. At Indiana should be a win because, like Northwestern, they'll be among the bottom feeders of the conference. USC at home, I'm never afraid of a Lincoln Riley team, so that should be a win. At PSU for a whiteout is probably the most difficult environment to play in the sport for a new staff, and I mean, it'll be pretty deep into the season, so they'll know each other very well at that point and know themselves very well at that point. But I just don't think that that's an environment you can walk into and win, especially with the question marks that we have on the offensive and defensive line. Yep. So I think that's a loss. UCLA should be a win at home. And then the big one, Oregon. For my money, I'm going to bet that Oregon wins this one. My heart will never be happy with saying that, but for the sake of thinking I can predict the schedule right, I'm going to say that we're going to lose that one.
So I think that was what?
8-4.
So 8-4. So Rutgers, Iowa, Penn State.
Rutgers, Iowa, Penn State, the Ducks.
Yep. It's certainly possible. The more I talk about this season, like I think that we really are like, I think 7.5 is really kind of the number. It's either 7 or 8 wins. Really depends on the offensive line, the lines.
Oh, real quick.
The line play.
Real quick. Not a stupid tweet, but I tweeted out earlier this week, and I think a lot of us engaged with it. Ryan Schill's moment of clarity that happened. I don't know what happened. I don't know what drug he took. We
need a wellness. Well, I mean, he's back on his normal.
He's back on his bullshit now. It's fine. But anything from 6-6 to 10-2 is totally within the realm of possibility, and I fully agree with him. Injury luck can definitely bring us down to 6 wins. I mean, we're already pretty thin on the offensive line and defensive line as it is. Well, I won't say thin on the defensive line, but unproven on the defensive line. Offensive line, we are thin. But 6-6 to 10-2, anywhere in between there is totally possible. For me personally, I think 7 is the bar where we should be. 7 is a acceptable season. 8 is a good season. 9 is a great season. 10 is cherry on top, icing on the cake season to me. So,
yep.
Yeah. Shout out to Ryan Schill for one single tweet that showed that you have brain cells.
Yeah, one single moment of coherence. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's stunning anytime one of those happens, or one of those duck accounts actually says something like, I was in a bit of an argument with one tonight that was like, I pointed out, like, it's like, hey, they got on this whole thing about that Fish has lost to Dan Lanning. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, and so did Kalen DeBoer. It's like, no, DeBoer didn't coach against Oregon. I'm like,
at Fresno he did.
Yes, he did. It's like, what is it with that fan base? And I'm like, oh, that didn't actually,
you don't know your
denying
opponent.
Actual reality.
Exactly.
Let's go ahead and move into the season superlatives. Real quick, I'll recap a couple of the takes from contributors that couldn't be here. Our buddy DawgProcess said team MVP is going to be Will Rogers. Offensive MVP is going to be Jonah Coleman. Defensive MVP, Ephesians Prysock. Offensive breakout player, Denzel Boston. Defensive breakout player, Thaddeus Dixon. Best non-transfer newcomer on offense, Adam Muhammad. Best non-transfer newcomer on defense. Via special exception, Zach Durfee. Yes, Zach Durfee transferred to Washington, but he should have been a part of the team last year, should have gotten to play much more than what he did in terms of just a few snaps in the Sugar Bowl. NCAA, you can still fuck off.
But hey, if he gets the exception for the extra year, I'm not going to be too mad about it.
He better damn get the exception for the extra year, unless he balls the hell out and goes to the league.
Even if he does ball out, I don't think there's enough tape.
Yep. And then, of course, Hood. Said team MVP is actually going to be Carson Bruner. Offensive MVP, Denzel Boston. Defensive MVP, a tie with, or a split with Carson Bruner and Thaddeus Dixon. Hood's offensive breakout player of the year. And here's to that, the upside of that 7, 8, 9, 10 wins. If Hood is prophetic, Swanee Fasolo was his offensive breakout player, with his defensive breakout player being Isaiah Ward. The non-transfer newcomers on either side of the ball, Adam Muhammad and Peyton Waters. From there, I'll hand these off to you. Who do you predict to be the overall team MVP for the Huskies this year?
I will go with Will Rogers as well. I think this season will go as the quarterback goes for us, because we already kind of touched on it a little bit. The thin / unproven offensive line. If we can get good quarterback play, able to get the ball out quickly, and Will can make good decisions, take care of the ball, we can be on that upper end of that 8, 9, 10 wins. If Will is not playing at that level, not taking care of the ball, can't get enough time to get the ball out, then we're in that 6, 7 win territory. So I think our season goes as Will Rogers goes this year. So I'm going to go with Will for sure.
Yeah. And I have to second that, because as tempted as I am to take Jonah Coleman, and I do think Jonah Coleman is going to be an absolute beast for us.
100%.
And is going to quickly become a lot of Husky fans vault up into some of their favorite Huskies of all time. But it's not just Jonah in that room.
Right.
Knock on wood, Cam Davis stays healthy all year, and that's a hell of a 1-2 punch at that position.
Right.
And therein, and certainly it's also no disrespect to Denzel Boston or Jeremiah Hunter. It's the there's multiple of them.
And so you have to go with the guy that touches the ball every play. There's only one of him on the field.
Right.
You don't rotate quarterback. I mean, you can, but it doesn't work.
That said, if we look back at the 2023 season, I would make and this is no disrespect to Mike, but I think if you look back at the 2023 season, I think that could have very easily been a split award between Mike Penix and Rome Odunze, and in my opinion, Rome deserved a trip to New York for the Heisman ceremony every bit as much as Mike did, and I think they both deserve to be there.
100% agree.
So offensive MVP, we can go maybe an offensive MVP that's not Will Rogers if he's our overall team MVP.
I went with Jonah Coleman. I mean, you have to go with Jonah Coleman. Well, I guess you don't have to, but I mean, how can you not? If it's not Will, it's going to be the other guy that's going to touch the ball the second most times. I don't think there's anybody else in the wide receiver room or running back room that will influence this season more than Jonah's play will.
Yep. Yeah, I tend to agree with that, and I think there's certainly a ton of possibility that both, I think you could be looking at 2,000 yard receivers, both close, if not exceeding double-digit touchdowns. But yeah, if Jonah's healthy, Jonah's the top 2 or 3. I mean, he's honestly a top 2 or 3 back in the Big Ten, and that's saying something. There's some really good running backs in the Big Ten.
Yeah,
but I think 100%. Jonah's a really, really good one. Flipping it over to the defensive side of the ball, who do you predict to be the defensive MVP?
Somewhat off the beaten path here. That I'm going to go with Sebastian Valdez.
Ooh, all right, I like it.
We did a couple player interviews early in the off season, and everyone that I talked to mentioned Sebastian Valdez as the top dog in that room on the defensive line. A guy that has a lot of experience, albeit at the FCS level. A guy that's, by all accounts, strong as an ox, that will eat up some blocks in the middle and keep guys like Hood's predicted MVP, Carson Bruner, free to play, make those plays on the ball and get those ball carriers down. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Seabass.
I like that, and I certainly think that, and where you're going to get some value there, not only is his play in the run game, but also bring in some pass rush from the
interior
position,
pressure,
especially in this defense, and with what we suspect Mr. Belichick is going to be doing with
correct,
the defense this year. I think that's a great call. I think I'm going to go a little off the beaten path as well, and say, I mean, and I think it's also because as much as I think Carson is the heart and soul of the defense in a lot of ways, it's like we talked about with running back and receiver. We don't just have one really good player at that position; we have two. And I think we kept our newcomers and excluded transfers, but here's where I'm going to highlight a transfer that I think is going to have a huge impact on the Washington defense this year, and that's the transfer from Sacramento State, Cameron Broussard. I think he's going to do some big things, and I think we haven't quite caught to the next segment. We're going to get into some hot takes. Our buddy TP has one that I definitely agreed with, but I think Cam Broussard is going to have a big reason why very quickly offenses in this conference are really not going to enjoy playing the Washington back seven and the Washington secondary in particular. And I think as much as I think we're all excited about Ephesians Prysock, and as well we should be, and what we have in that room. I think the impact that Cam Broussard is going to make is going to be equally as important.
Yeah, my runner-up pick for defensive MVP, I was flip-flopping a little bit, was going to be the other Cam in the defensive backfield, Cam Fabiculanan. I think that what we saw out of him in a more rotational role than I think we'll see him in this year. He flashed a lot, obviously made a lot of big plays in the screen game and the underneath pass game, that I think that he can have a huge impact in what we do defensively this year. So yeah, he was going to be my runner-up pick, but I mean,
I like that.
Like you hinted to, DP's take, the defense is going to look a lot different than it did under the DeBoer administration.
Yeah, if I ever find myself in Deadpool's situation and end up at the Time Variance Authority and get a chance to travel around the multi-universe, different parts of the multiverse, I want to spend a little time in the multiverse where Cam Fab started and Asa didn't in the national championship.
In the national championship.
Hopefully in that universe also Dylan doesn't get hurt, but
true.
Or maybe it's Cam that doesn't get hurt and we have Dylan and Cam all of last season.
Oh my god.
Those would have been
lots of what ifs. Offensive breakouts?
Yeah, offensive breakout.
I don't see how you don't have this answer for offensive breakout. It's got to be Denzel. It's got to be Denzel, because we've been hearing about Denzel in practice for 2 years now. He sat and paid his dues, did his time behind the three-headed monster of first, second, third round draft picks that we had, and now it's his time. It's his shot, and we've seen some highlights from practice and the mock game and the spring game where this dude is putting up some pretty ridiculous plays. The one-handed catch he had in the mock game was obscene. And yeah, I don't think there's any other choice besides him, except obviously Hood went with the redshirt freshman O-lineman, which would be amazing.
Well, the left tackle, I mean, that definitely... Yeah. It really is hard to not pick Denzel, or particularly when we do have, the other category of the best, non-transfer newcomer.
Yeah.
The only other one that might enter into that conversation, and it's a situation that I don't want to see happen because I want Cam and Jonah home healthy all year. I think it's going to be pretty close to a consensus on the non-transfer newcomer.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm going to say, I think the offensive breakout player is also my offensive breakout prediction is also Denzel, with a little bit of a pin in. If injuries strike the running back room. Mm-hmm. The consensus best non-transfer newcomer on offense is going to be right into this
the offensive MVP or breakout player. I mean, yeah.
Yep.
For sure.
Flipping it over to the other side, defensive breakout player of the year. Real quick refresher: DawgProcess said Thaddeus Dixon. Hood said Isaiah Ward. Who do you got?
I'm going to go with a transfer defensive back in Jordan Shaw. I think playing in the nickel, he's going to have a big year for us. Yeah, I think that, man, we just keep hinting to this DawgProcess hot take that we all agree with. But yeah, that defensive backfield's going to be a problem. And I think Jordan Shaw is going to play a big role in that.
Big shouts to DP. He brought his A game last week, and he brought it again today.
That he did.
Yeah. I said, I kind of, you could say, defensive MVP. I might have spoiled it a little bit. I could argue and say Cam Broussard again here. I really agree with you on Jordan Shaw, but I actually am going to say, big defensive breakout player. I'm going to go slightly off the beaten path, or maybe slightly firmly batted out of bounds.
Nice.
And go with Elijah Jackson. I think he's going to play with a lot more confidence this year. I think he's got a lot better coaching that's not going to put him in bad spots.
It's true.
So I'm going to go with EJ.
Yeah, it's hard because I thought about EJ too, and I was like trying to figure out what I define for myself as a breakout player. I mean, like those of us that are around Washington football a lot and really pay attention to Washington football wouldn't necessarily consider EJ as a breakout player when he started all last year at corner. But yeah, I mean, as far as profile and big play recognition and all that kind of stuff, yeah, he could be a breakout player among the more broad national Big Ten media type.
Yeah. I think it's a year that he kind of lives up to the potential, and like he was brought in and kind of during the peak of the Jimmy Lake defensive back.
Yeah.
And I think he's just going to be put in a lot. I think the way that he breaks out is that I think we're, from what the things that we're hearing from, our fellow podcasters, and certainly, I give a lot of credence in listening to Locked On Huskies regularly. And, we think that, Ephesians is probably going to do a pretty damn good job of basically locking down one side of the field.
Right.
But I think that a lot of offensives aren't going to have a whole lot of fun going the other direction either. And that's
very true.
The path for Elijah. All right, moving over to the best. We've hinted at it a lot. Best non-transfer newcomer on offense.
Adam Muhammad.
Yep.
I mean, what other options really are there? I really sat there and racked my brain for a solid 10 minutes trying to think of who else I would even consider for this, and I didn't even come up with a name.
Yeah. Maybe like you could see maybe like a Rashid Williams, but yeah, it's Adam Muhammad.
Yeah. It's Adam Muhammad.
It's Adam Muhammad. It's going to be just really fun to see what he does with his touches this year, and then projecting that down the line is whew.
Absolutely.
And then flipping it over, best non-transfer newcomer on the defensive side of the ball.
Per DP's allowance in the group chat, he allowed all of us to steal his pick because it's correct, and Zach Durfee.
Yep. I agree with Zach, and then if he sees the field, again, this is kind of depending on the depth and what happens to in terms of injuries, but I think if he sees the field, I tend also to agree with Hood. I think Peyton Waters is going to be a special player for the Washington Huskies, and I think you could see some of that this fall if he gets his opportunities.
I agree for sure.
But I think the Adam Muhammad discussion is a good segue into we'll do 2 to 3 kind of warm to hot takes. We could start maybe warm and go spicier as we go.
That's fair. That's fair.
Briefly, I'll call out DPs, and it's a little spicier just because it's a conditional one. And speaking of Adam Muhammad, DawgProcess is if Adam Muhammad gets a couple hundred touches, he's freshman All Big Ten, and he is a future All Conference player.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I mean, I don't see how he gets the ball at least 200 times and doesn't make a freshman All Conference team. Hell, even a freshman second or honorable mention All-American team. But we'll see. It depends on how the carry share plays out in the backfield there. But fingers crossed that Jonah and Cam stay healthy. But if Adam does have to get that many touches, I would not be upset.
Or if we just decide that we're gonna go kind of old school Big Ten and just be like, okay,
run it.
1, 2. Adams 3, bam, 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 bam.
Where's the Jimmy Lake run the damn ball hat?
Yeah. This team might be okay with that.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be mad at it.
Because, well, our offense, we're not going to have a playbook that's straight out of Tech Mobile.
True. Oh my
The original.
God. John Donovan should still be arrested for domestic terrorism, I swear.
Yeah, or give a portion of his salary to everyone that had to watch a football game that year.
Seriously. Hood probably had
Hood's
the
kind of
second
warm take.
Yeah, I was gonna say
we'll go with Hood's kind of. I would say it's a warm take. I don't think it's a super hot take. And that's that Will Rogers throws for 4,000. And yeah,
I think he could throw for 4,000 just in the screen game.
Yeah. If, we talked about it a little earlier where it's like, well, I think that Denzel and Jeremiah are going to end up with about $1,000 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
Then splitting 2,000 amongst everybody else, I think that's a pretty reasonable expectation. Yeah. But what's your first take that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I was going to say that's actually a pretty good segue into my warm take. Statistically speaking, I think that 2024 Jeremiah Denzel will rival 2023 Rome Jalen.
JP or
JP. Okay. And J-Mac gets an asterisk for the injury last year, but
yeah.
JP.
Speaking of alternate universes that would have been really fun to see, is that big three healthy all season?
Yes.
We wouldn't have done the hey, we won 10 games in a row by a touchdown or less thing.
Yeah. It would have been video game numbers. College football 25 numbers. But
it's not stupid tweets. I'm actually going to call out a few great / elite tweets and to one of the best in the business at what he does. But shouts to Tony Castricone, who's been on an absolute Twitter heater with just great threads, great takes. And shouts to Casey Byers. That introduction to the Big Ten video, bringing back Bob Rondo to narrate. Damn near brought tears to my eyes. So good. And so nice to see just like the whole department on the top of their game. So, okay. Yeah, I like that one. I'm going to go, I'll go, I'm going to start mine, and mine are going to kind of build a little bit. So I would say what my warm take is, we'll have a top 6 offense, a top third offense in the Big Ten.
It's not a super hot take, but it's a take.
It's warm, like, with the questions on the offensive line. It's not, it's not a stone cold take, but and then I'm going to build it to my next one, getting a little warmer, in that UW will also have a top 6, and I actually think it's going to be top 3 or 4 defense in the Big Ten.
That was one of my takes too. That was my next take, was that UW has a top 4 scoring defense in the Big Ten. And this conference, the defenses in this conference are up there. So for us to have a top 3-4 scoring defense would mean that we're probably in that 8, 9, 10 win category or spectrum of the win predictions.
Yeah, I do want to, I do real quick, it's a brief segue. I do want to call out one of our network affiliates in the college huddle, the Westlot Pirates. Some of their takes in their season preview of Washington were a little far afield when they were saying that Northwestern is going to have a better player at basically every position on the field than Washington does. That's but they did call out and find an interesting stat in the last decade that the combination of UCLA, Oregon, and USC have had I believe top 1 or 2, or excuse me, I think a top 3 scoring or total defense in the Pac-12, a total combined of 7 times. Washington, all by ourselves, has done it 9. So the defense is going to be back on Montlake is the point that I'm trying to make here, or that we're trying to make here.
Get back to the Jimmy Lake D coordinator and defensive back coach era of defense.
I don't think any of them are going to hit a kid.
Yeah, seriously. My next take, I don't know if it's hotter or not than the top 3-4 scoring defense, but I think that Jonah Coleman will be first team all Big 12 at running back.
All right. That kind of segues into, and we can list the next of Hood's takes, in that he said that at least 3 players from the Washington Huskies are all Big Ten first or second teams. So
I could see that.
I like that.
On the all conference team, how many wide receivers do they give? Is it 3?
I'm not sure.
Because if it's only 2, I wouldn't be surprised to see us not get a wide receiver on there. But if it's 3, I think you could probably get Jeremiah or Denzel at least on second team.
And there's a possibility, if it's 3, that it's both of them.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and that's going to be the interesting thing, is like, yes, there are more touted receivers at a number of schools. Certainly Ohio State has a room that's just unholy.
Mm-hmm.
But let's call spade a spade. They still have Will Howard throwing them the football.
It's true. It's true. And I mean, that's another thing too, is like, you could conceivably, with the most decorated quarterback in the history of the SEC transferring into Washington, and the quarterback situation across the Big Ten, you could see Will get a first or second team all conference nod. Because, I mean, really, you have Dylan Gabriel, Will Howard, Alex Orji, Miller Moss. Like, it's wide open for
Alex Orji, who Michigan's staff trusted even less to throw the football than they did J.J. McCarthy.
Exactly. So
I don't think you're going to get an all-conference player from taking steps backward and turning left to hand the ball off, and taking steps backward and turning right to hand the ball off. Like,
exactly. So I mean,
not in 2024, maybe in 1924, but
but yeah, you could conceivably get Will on the all-conference first or second team. So I think Hood's take is definitely a feasible one.
Yeah, and that builds. I'll go ahead and list off DP's second one, which was that UW will have the best back 7 in the Big. It's spicy, but if you look at it, and if they perform up to expectation or to their potential.
I think that's across the board. Back 7, I think it's possible. We might have a little bit of purple-colored glasses on every once in a while, but I mean, Ohio
State's is.
Yeah, they have some dogs. Yeah.
Yep.
But I mean, if you really just look at our defensive backfield across the board, and the depth at like the safety position and in the nickel, I don't think it's a outlandish take to say that we could compete for the best back 7 in the conference.
Yep. I'll go ahead and throw out my spiciest take, and that's that Washington is going to finish above Michigan in the conference standings in 2020.
Chew on that for a second. I have to chew on that. I know
that's going to hit a little close to home for you.
Yeah, a little bit. Shout out to the Michigan Wolverines that I have to like half-heartedly root for now. But yeah, no, I don't disagree with that, because for those that don't know, I have a family member that now attends the University of Michigan, so I've been debating about Michigan versus Washington football a lot this offseason. But Alex Orji, we just talked about him. And just like I mentioned, our season goes as Will goes. And the same will be true for them, because we all know their defense is good. We all know Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant and Will Johnson are going to do Will Johnson and Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham things. But if you can't score points, you're 2023 Iowa. I don't care. Like, Michigan isn't going to be able to score with the rest of the Big Ten, whether it's Ohio State, Oregon, USC, Washington. Like, they're not going to be able to put up points at the same pace that some of these other schools are going to be able to do.
I guess that's related to my kind of other spicy take, and that this is a more macro take. Mm-hmm. The bigger adjustment that needs to happen is not the West Coast schools adjusting to the slug it out, big, slow, physical football, Big Ten West, and most of the conference not named Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. Even those teams, Penn State's really that style. They just have much better athletes, and particularly on the defense. They're not big, strong, and slow. They're big, strong, and holy crap fast.
Yeah.
But the bigger adjustment is that the rest of the conference adjusting to the offenses and the team speed that the Pac-12 or the former Pac-12 schools are bringing to the table is the bigger adjustment that'll be made. And I think that we're going to see that borne out a number of times this fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. I mean, it doesn't make sense for everyone to adjust, all the West Coast schools to adjust their play style. And I will say that Washington, historically speaking, as you mentioned, um, is the most suited of the four West Coast schools to be able to adjust to that. But they're going to have to start, them being the traditional Big Ten schools, are going to have to start playing against high-powered offenses a lot more. And we'll have to match to score enough points.
Yeah, and I would look back at the history, like, I don't think him like, yeah, Ohio State didn't have a great year last year, but they were still basically in it to get to the conference championship game, even with really, really suspect quarterback play.
Right.
When Ohio State's offense has been functioning at full capacity the last 5-10 years, those programs from the 3 yards and a cloud of dust part of the Big Ten haven't fared super well against the Buckeyes.
There's a reason that Ohio State was consistently in the playoff and in the national title games. No one else can score points with them in the conference.
Yep. All right. Any super spicy takes or
I don't have any super spicy takes. I got my 3 out.
Okay. All right, then let's we'll move on into a look around the rest of the conference. And while we do that, I do actually have to check on a final score from. I'm
doing the same thing.
And so, real quick, we'll do the quick recap. Rutgers did what they should have done and just basically demolished Howard in Piscataway this evening. The Minnesota Row the Boat Golden Gophers took a late lead and gave it right back and lost 19-17 to not a good North Carolina team. So
are you just looking at the box score, or are you reading this headline that I'm reading right now?
Oh boy.
Minnesota missed the field goal as time expired. Jesus Christ. Maybe they will fit in.
Gophers, if you need anybody to commiserate with, talk to a Duck fan.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's not a rivalry game, so it probably hurts the Duck fans just a little bit more. But actually, Gophers, make sure you bring that up about the pain of missing field goals, please,
at
every opportunity. But we'll move on to the first game on the dock, or we'll just go down the list as it's listed on.
Word to Illinois, absolutely demolishing Eastern Illinois.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was Sorry, that was the other one. And then we do have a couple of games. God, it is weird. We have games across like 4 days this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, shouts to Illinois for doing what they needed to do and what they were supposed to do. First game tomorrow is a 4 p.m. Pacific kick. Florida Atlantic against a head coach that we know at the University of
Jonathan Smith
makes his debut at Michigan State. What do you think?
Honestly, I don't think this is even worth watching. But I mean, Michigan State should win this. It's really funny to predict games this early in the season, except for like the few scheduled difficult games. Like we'll get to it eventually. The
last one of the weekend.
Yeah, the last one of the weekend is really the big one. But yeah, it's like the first 2-3 weeks of the season predicting these games is always so funny because it's like, what are we predicting against? A lot of FCS teams, lower level opponents, but yeah, no, Michigan State should win this.
Well, one Big Ten team plays a team named the Huskies. One plays a team from the state of Idaho, which has not necessarily always gone well. You know, teams from the state of Idaho against that school have not necessarily gone that well for that program. So,
true.
You know, there is
That's
that.
valid. There's valid.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a Michigan State win. The other game tomorrow is Western Michigan against Wisconsin.
That's a Wisconsin win.
True. It's a Wisconsin win. There is kind of an interesting one that will tell us a little bit about what's going to happen in State College this year and a rivalry game that is going to have some spice to it first thing Saturday morning, and that's Penn State on the road in Morgantown taking on the Mountaineers.
Yeah, that one will be interesting. I think Penn State wins it, but that will be an interesting game. I guess I'm just looking through the Big Ten slate this weekend. They're the only, UCLA too, but they're the only two Big Ten teams playing true road games to start the season. But yeah, I think Penn State will pull it out. They're talented enough that they should win this game, but it will be interesting for sure to see what Drew Aller looks like for the first time this season on the road.
In a hostile environment.
For sure.
Also 9 a.m. Saturday morning, Purdue, Indiana State. This is a Purdue win.
Yeah.
If it's not, it's really not going to be a lot of fun in West Lafayette this fall.
Very true.
Similarly, here's the first chance of 2024 to answer the age-old question: can Iowa offense?
Iowa offense? Oh man,
they get Illinois State coming to Kinnick at 9 a.m. on Saturday. I do think Iowa wins.
I think Iowa can score at least 7 points, so they should win that game.
Yeah, and that's probably all they need to against Illinois State. Here's the other game, including a team named the Huskies, and that's Jim Mora's UConn Huskies traveling to Maryland.
I keep forgetting that Jim Mora coaches that team.
Yeah. He did eventually coach the Huskies, just on the...
He got his dream job just on the other coast.
Yeah. In the town that used to be called Store, but then they got another one.
Yeah.
I think that's a Maryland win.
Yeah, Maryland should win that pretty easily.
If not, we'll make fun of them. 12 of the first, or at least is listed on the conference website. FIU traveling to Bloomington to take on Indiana at 12:30 on Saturday. Indiana with their influx from James Madison. They brought in a good quarterback in Curtis Rourke. Indiana should win this game pretty easily.
Mm-hmm. ESPN has them as a 21.5 point favorite in that game. I believe it.
Yep. Also at that time, the Akron Zips, who may actually score Zip in the horseshoe against the Buckeyes. This is not a good MAC program. There are good MAC programs. This is not one of them. This is Ohio State, and this is Ohio State by a lot.
Yeah, I don't look at the spreads. I'm not a big spread guy, but I don't know if I've seen a 48.5 point favorite. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot. Future opponent. Northwestern Wildcats are getting visited by the Miami of Ohio Redhawks. It's going to be an interesting game. This one actually, I think, could be... Miami's not a bad MAC program. This is going to tell me something a little bit about, it's at least something that we can learn something about Northwestern. They should win, but any rumors that Northwestern is going to come here and be competitive if they struggle or if they lose to Miami of Ohio, you can put that
to bed pretty
rest.
Quickly. Yeah, for sure. I think Northwestern wins this, but yeah, there's not a lot to look forward to for a lot of Northwestern football this season. So you got to enjoy these first couple weeks while you got them.
UTEP travels into Lincoln to take on Nebraska. I think Nebraska is actually going to be a sneaky good team in the conference this year.
I agree.
I think that not only do they get back to a bowl game, I think they're going to make some pretty significant noise. And so I definitely think that this is a Nebraska win.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Praying that they can pull off a win next week against Colorado.
Yeah, I think they're going to.
They should
take Colorado
pretty handily.
To the woodshed. I don't think I'd like to be Shedeur Sanders next week.
No, thank you.
I'll put it that way. 4:30 on Saturday, the Idaho Vandals make a trip to the circular stadium that resembles something in everyone's restroom.
Toilet bowl.
The toilet bowl known as Autzen. I think this is, of course, an Oregon win. Oregon tends to handle these with alacrity and violence in their hearts.
True.
I will say that it would be incredibly funny for Idaho to pull
off the upset of the century.
Yeah. This would be their Montana.
It would be their Montana. It would be the Michigan App State game from, I can't remember what year that was, but it would be that. Shout out to Deontay Cooper.
Yeah, absolutely. Fresno State travels into the big house. This is actually sneaky. Like, this is going to tell us some things about the Wolverines, because Fresno State, even with the Tedford retirement due to medical, medically, from medical necessity, Fresno State still, it's not the program that it was under Kalen DeBoer, but they've still got some talent down there, and they can do some things. So
yeah, Fresno State isn't a slouch team.
But
Michigan should win this game, but I'm going to be watching that one pretty intensely for aforementioned reasons of talking smack to my brother. But yeah, no, I'm going to be watching that just to see what Alex Orji does, because his performance in that game will tell me a lot about how much I'm going to be able to talk smack for the rest of the season. So I'm going to be watching that one pretty closely. I do think Michigan wins it, though.
Yep. UCLA travels to Honolulu to play Hawaii. I think this is a UCLA win. If it's not a UCLA win, it's gonna get pretty hard to find UCLA wins at all this fall.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're going to be predicting quite a lot of UCLA L's this season.
Yeah. We'll skip over the 8 o'clock kick, because we'll talk about that in a little further depth. But then probably it is the marquee matchup in the conference for the weekend. In Vegas, 4:30 Sunday afternoon, USC LSU. This is an interesting matchup in that it's got, obviously, both teams have recently lost a Heisman Trophy quarterback, there was a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback on both of these teams last season,
right?
That are no longer there. I think that there's, certainly, I believe it's Garrett Nussmeier that won the job at LSU. Very, very well regarded. Very much some questions on the defensive side of the ball. Tell me if this sounds familiar at all. USC obviously has talent all over everywhere because it's still USC. Do I think D'Antlin is a good coach and is going to do some really, make some drastic improvements to that defense? Yes, I do. Does it matter this early in the year? I actually think USC gets this.
Really? That's interesting. I don't. Solely because this is a standalone game that everyone will be watching. It's the marquee matchup of the weekend, certainly within the conference, but one of the marquee matchups for the entirety of college football. And Lincoln Riley is allergic to winning those games. So I'm going to go with LSU.
Yeah. It's certainly something that we can learn from in terms of, is Miller Moss the truth, or just to start a conversation about whether they should be playing Jaden Mayala at quarterback rather than Miller Moss if he struggles. So I think SC, I think there's enough weapons, and I just don't buy LSU yet. I'll buy LSU again when they prove it. Right. But moving on, 8 o'clock Saturday, the Fish era begins in full.
Right.
Weber State, one of two teams that wear purple and are named the Wildcats that come to Husky Stadium this year in September. One of them is obviously in August, but obviously I think this is a Husky win.
Right.
While Weber State is actually a better than average and actually a pretty good FCS team. They got on a hot streak toward the end of the year, and they've got some pieces. They've got a couple of good receivers, but their quarterback is short. Throws from a very sidearm, but he's got some mobility. But with the athleticism of the defense, it's not anything that super worries me. I think we're going to see multiple interceptions by the Huskies in this game. I think at least one of them may go all the way back the other direction. I don't think this is a repeat of Montana. I think Washington wins this. I don't know necessarily that it's an absolute blow the doors off, but I think this is probably something of like 45-17, 48-20, 48-17, something in that scope or range. What do you think?
That's pretty close to what I had. I was thinking 49-21 type situation. I'm not worried about the game. I'm more so thinking about like which incoming true freshmen and redshirt freshmen are going to be able to get their feet wet in this game, and how much will Damon get to play in this game.
Yep.
But I think you're absolutely right. I think with the the athleticism on the defense. We will see multiple turnovers, probably interceptions. I want to see a big performance from the guys that we had mentioned as potential offensive breakout players in Denzel Boston, offensive MVP Jonah Coleman. I want to see them kind of get in their rhythm together. But yeah, I don't think we need to spend a whole heck of a lot of time talking about whether or not UW can win this game, because it should be a pretty easy one to handle.
Yeah. I think this game feels to me like it's a game where I don't necessarily think that, like, I think it's a game that Jonah probably gets like 12, 14 carries. Cam gets 8 to 12. Adam gets 6 to 10. And it's
Right.
like Jonah has 80 yards. Cam has 75. Adam has 55 or 60. Denzel or Jeremiah probably goes over 100, with a couple of probably pretty long plays. And then, yeah, it is kick your feet up and relax in the second half kind of football game at Husky Stadium, which is nice. Or I'm not advocating for this, but it might be the kind of game where it's like, you know what, we're ahead by 35 points in the third quarter, and it's 10-15.
Yeah.
People might head for the exits.
The head home, the early exit UW fans. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And one thing that I am interested to watch in this game and in a lot of the games early in the season is the rotation and usage of the tight end position, because we have a pretty talented group there. We haven't heard a whole heck of a lot or seen a whole heck of a lot of as far as who's going to be in there with the ones. And in that first group, obviously Quentin Moore will be there because he is the most seasoned, has the most experience with the team of the group. But then you have the Ryan Otten and Kaleki Latu, Decker DeGraff. So we got some names there that will come in and make some plays, but I'm interested to see how those rotate through, who gets in there first after obviously Moore being the first one. And then also seeing the rotation of the offensive line. We feel like we pretty well know who the first group will be, but then from there, what does it look like as we rotate through? After obviously, hopefully, I won't get too ahead of myself because we did get ahead of ourselves against Montana. But hopefully we get up by enough to be able to start rotating some of those guys through and seeing guys get their reps and see what the best five are going to be on that offensive line.
Yep. Yeah. Here's a quick, just for fun question.
Mm-hmm.
Who scores the first Washington touchdown of 2024?
Jonah Coleman. I think it's got to be Jonah. I think the first touchdown for Washington will be on the ground. And I think if it's on the ground, it's going to be Jonah. Maybe Cam, but I think Jonah. What do you got?
I think I'm going to take Quentin.
Really?
I think it's going to be one of those where I think we're going to have done a bunch to run the ball to get down there. And I think we're going to just a quick little play action flip.
Yeah, I can see that.
Speaking or it's going to be it's either going to be Quentin or it's going to be a defensive touchdown.
Another thing, I want to see who gets out there first in the return game.
Yeah.
Because Daniel Ngata is still on this team. He made a little niche for himself kicking or returning kicks last year, but we did hear about guys like Rashawn Clark getting run and return throughout camp and that kind of thing. So I'm interested to see who Fish and Co. put out there in the return game. Because I feel like we haven't seen a return to the house on a kickoff in quite some time. We saw Rome get his punt return touchdown last year, but kickoff return touchdown, honestly racking my brain to try to figure out who the last one was.
I think it's probably John Ross.
Yeah, I was going to say John Ross against Rutgers in 2016.
Might be.
But yeah, I feel like that's something that I would like to see. And I want to see who's going to be out there with that first group returning too. Yeah.
The other thing that I'm going to be keeping an eye on is how much of the hand. I think in previous years it was all about, like, early in the season it was like, okay, we kind of expect the offense to be pretty vanilla and not tip their hand much.
Right.
For me, I think it's the other side of the ball that doesn't, like, I think they do a few things to get reps, bringing some exotics, but I don't think they go full into their bag of tricks. But that's certainly something is also just to see how effective the defense is, staying pretty vanilla and not bringing, I don't think we need to show our hand
to Weber State
to cause Munoz problems for them. So
right, exactly. I am interested to see how they rotate through the defensive line, not necessarily the guys, but just how the rotations work. Because
situationally,
yeah, exactly, situationally, and also just like they talked about it a little bit in the presser this week with Steve Belichick. It was like whether or not they're going to do full like hockey line switches or if they're going to sub them out one or two at a time type of thing. I just want to see how they do it, just because it's a whole new staff. We don't know what they're going to do. So it's always fun kind of learning a new coaching staff, how they do things, how they want to play and rotate guys in games like this. So yeah, it's another one that I'll be keeping a little eye on.
Yep. It's a learning weekend.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's a comfortable learning weekend and not a
not a big lesson learning weekend.
Yeah. And of course the big key is just no injuries.
Yeah. No injuries. Walk out of there with a W.
I don't hope for any injuries to Weber State, but especially down to the Washington Huskies.
Right. 100%.
So I think that'll about do it for our game preview. We will, of course, be back next week to recap this one and talk more about what we learned this coming Saturday night. Thanks for listening, and go Dogs.
Go Dogs.